A small-town football hero turned law enforcer, Daniel Holtzclaw had it all. The reputation, a beautiful girlfriend, a job he loved. That is, until one fateful summer night, a traffic stop that changed everything. A woman who appeared intoxicated swerved in front of him. The jovial, hard-working young police officer would be vilified in the media as a psychopath, monster, narcissist, serial rapist. But what if they got it wrong? In this case, there are no witnesses, not a single direct piece of forensic evidence tying him to the crime scenes.
It is unheard of to have this one-man crime spree going on, all of these accusers, all of these crime scenes, all of these alleged crimes, and they can't produce a single witness, they can't produce a single piece of direct evidence.
We'll let you hear from Daniel himself, who is behind bars. He says he's innocent and a scapegoat to ease racial tensions, railroaded by his own colleagues. And the scary part is, it could happen to anybody.
Next on Michelle Malkin Investigates. Michelle Malkin Investigates. Now, here's Michelle Malkin.
Welcome to part 2 of our special series, Daniel in the Den, the truth about the Holtzclaw case, where we dig deeper, going beyond headlines like these. Oklahoma cop gets life for sex crimes against the poor. Officials, Oklahoma City police officer accused of sex crimes fired. Officer accused of sex crimes sees support from hometown, but not from fellow officers. We'll show you the rest of the story you haven't seen.
It was devastating. It crucified me. It was hard, and that's not who I am. That's not exactly who I am at all. People want to jump to the conclusion and try to feel good about themselves and say, well, Daniel fits that profile. I don't fit any profile of anything, because I didn't do anything wrong.
In part 1, we showed you the Holtzclaw family that Daniel's hometown of Enid knows. 2 police officers in a multicultural love story. They raised their half-Japanese kids with traditional values of honesty, thrift, faith, and hard work. We walked you through Daniel's 2014 traffic stop and an accuser's glaring inconsistencies. We showed you that police could not find any forensic evidence of a sexual assault just hours after she claimed it happened. We raised questions about the detective's investigative methods and unsubstantiated characterization of Daniel as a monster and sociopath. And we spotlighted their willingness to overlook the shifting stories and claims from one accuser whose drug use greatly compromised her credibility. Now, in part 2 of our series, we'll dive into the much-hyped DNA evidence with highly regarded forensic scientist Dan Crane. Unlike the other detectives, he's a real expert, and his questions about their work on this case will not make the Oklahoma City PD bosses happy. As I found out firsthand, the OCPD overseers don't like it when you ask too many questions. Unless he's sexually assaulting her? Is that what you're saying? There'd be no other... What if...
I'm going to interrupt here. I mean, they've answered it twice.
I know, but I'm kind of exploring...
I also understand kind of the tone this is taking, so it's time to just move on to the next question.
But first, let's head back to OKC and scrutinize even more of the accusers whose convoluted tales raise heaps of doubt about the case against Daniel. And the story gets more unbelievable. Oklahoma City has an unfortunate history. It is the site of one of the worst domestic terror attacks our nation has ever seen. A memorial now stands at the federal building where Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols killed 168 people. The city also mourns regularly as routine storms destroy cars, houses, and lives in a place nicknamed Tornado Alley. And finally, it's the setting of our story of injustice, the place where an entire department and city turned their backs on a police officer targeted by a racially charged mob seeking social justice over real justice. That man is Officer Daniel Holtzclaw, Daniel in the Den, now behind bars for crimes he says never even happened. In this section of Northeast Oklahoma City,
Daniel Holtzclaw pulled over Janie Liggins after she swerved in front of him in June 2014. She claims he made her perform oral sex on him near a busy intersection and in view of surveillance cameras. A man she described as the wrong height, hair color, and skin type. But as lead detective Kim Davis admitted to me when asked about the common frequency of false allegations against the police,
people lie.
We know Liggins changed her story several times. Did Daniel?
What changed in the 2 hours that Daniel Holtzclaw gave his interrogation about his side of the story versus all of the evolutions that happened in Janie Liggins?
Oh, nothing changed. He admitted to pulling her over. He admitted to putting her in the back. He admitted to everything that Janie said except the sexual assault.
There's no forensic evidence to back up what she said.
Correct.
And you still believe her, not him?
I do.
I assume it's because of all the other women that became a part of this case.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. When you have one victim, I believed her, but we don't always get things done when you have one victim, but when you have 13, and the MO's the same, and the verbiage is the same, it just becomes a little bit more believable.
13 accusers with the same MOs and verbiage? Actually, the accusers' stories varied widely. Some alleged vaginal rape, others claimed oral sodomy, still others said that they were forced to flash their breasts. 13 sounds so damning, until you see how exactly the pileup occurred.
Quite honestly, it wasn't just 13. 13 made it to court.
Meet Brian Bates, Oklahoma City community activist, video vigilante, and private investigator who exposes crime and corruption. He was also part of Daniel's defense team.
In total, there were 20 accusers. 7 were eliminated from the very beginning because their accusations were so outlandish, the police couldn't even forward them with charges.
I just want to stop you right there. That's stunning.
Yes.
Because I would say that pretty much there's nobody in America outside of the small circle of his advocates, friends, family, you, his team, who knows this fact.
Things that didn't get reported. There were 20 accusers. One of those accusers was a male accuser. These are people who were accusing him of stuff after he had already been put on administrative leave, during times he was nowhere around. They were crazy stories, and as crazy as some of the actual accusers who made it to court are, these people were even more outlandish. So there were 7 that were eliminated from the beginning, which left us with 13. Of the 13, only 8 was he found guilty of, which means more than half of his total accusers were already found to be lying, not to be telling the truth.
Of those 13 accusers, only 3 came forward on their own. Police created a profile of Black female victims, hunted them down, and then proactively informed some of these women that they were seeking out sexual assault victims. There were no witnesses, no direct evidence against Daniel, nor that there was even a crime. Yet nearly every accuser has filed a lawsuit seeking money, even those on whose charges Daniel was found not guilty. One of these people is Carla Raines, who claimed under oath that Daniel forced her to expose her breasts. But when she first talked to the detective, Bates shows us that wasn't the case.
Have you ever come to any contact where an officer has been inappropriate?
No.
Have you ever had to expose yourself to them?
No.
Carla Raines is probably one of the most reluctant accusers / victims, but it gives a very perfect example of the investigative process and how biased it was when they would approach these women.
Well, this is the deal. We've got several victims, okay? And so we're trying to go back on this guy, and he's a pretty bad guy.
This is a woman who, throughout her interview, 7 times says not only is she not a victim, she's totally confused about what the detective's talking about, and he keeps on her and keeps on her until he finally spoon feeds her exactly what to accuse Daniel of.
He's having women do different things.
Oh, thinking they're going to go to jail if they do a favor for him, he wouldn't.
There you go.
Okay, I know what you're talking about.
7 times she denies being a victim. Let's count.
Have you ever come to any contact where an officer has been inappropriate?
No.
Have you ever had to expose yourself to them?
No.
Okay.
But,
You wasn't asked to, if you had any drugs on you, anything like that, and you had to...
expose myself? But I know what you're talking about.
That's the clasp and shake.
No. I haven't had... How did you get my name anyway on something like this? Because I haven't really been on the streets and stuff that much. There's only one officer that I know a few years back. He was a black cop. They used to come around here. He exposed himself to me. I hope I helped you, but like I said, that's
you
all the
did.
time.
You did.
You look in Rocky Gregory's official police report, it doesn't mention a single one of those times that she said, "I'm not a victim." It says from the very first paragraph, she is a victim.
Another very damning sin of omission.
Right, and I guarantee you the police chief and nobody else listened to the interview. They were provided with a hard copy report, and they read that report, and that report reads completely different than their interaction did. So it's not hard to understand why the rest of the department fell in line and felt Daniel was guilty, because all they have to base it on are these reports that are extremely biased in how that they're produced.
Perhaps this evidence is why jurors found Daniel not guilty on her charges. So we are looking beyond the incomplete reports and going straight to the interviews, like this one Detective Rocky Gregory conducted with Shardarion Hill.
He told me I wasn't going first, and then he told me I was, and then he was like, but if you cooperate, you know that I wouldn't go to jail.
Daniel arrested Hill in northeast Oklahoma City when she was high on PCP and being rushed to the hospital after she crushed a glass vial of the drug in her mouth. He checked on her and followed up on Facebook, an innocuous, if unwise, gesture that was later interpreted in the worst way possible. After Daniel's face was on the news, Hill claimed he sexually assaulted her while she was handcuffed to a bed and coming down from a high in a busy hospital. Yet nobody saw.
At the very end, when the interview's over, she doesn't think she's being recorded anymore, she made a comment that even the prosecutors, believe this or not, the prosecutors had never bothered to listen to that on the tape. And when I brought it forward in the trial had to be put on hold. We all had to go into a back room so the prosecutors could listen to it because they'd never heard this before. And we couldn't play it in open court until they heard it.
So this is good evidence?
Well, you tell me.
I think so, because I mean, y'all, even if he didn't even rape nobody or nothing, he's been in contact with people that he arrested.
That's really important. That one statement that the prosecutors had never even bothered to listen to is the whole reason all 6 of her allegations were torpedoed, and the jury saw Hill for exactly who she is. She's a liar.
Then there's Sherry Ellis, someone the jury believed, even though she told police her attacker looked nothing like Daniel.
Tell me your description of him.
He's black.
Okay. He's black male?
Muscular.
Muscular. How tall, could you tell? You're pretty tall. How tall are you? How tall are you?
5'11".
Is he taller than you or shorter than you?
Like right here, maybe, like that.
So you think he's shorter than you?
Yeah.
But Daniel is 6'2" and light-skinned, not short or black. Her story continues that he forced her to perform oral sex before driving to an abandoned schoolyard. Bates takes us on this route.
The GPS did not support her version of events. The GPS says they never stopped at the schoolyard. The GPS says he was only in the area for a minute or two and was simply driving by.
So we stop by the infamous former schoolyard, where Ellis claims he parked and raped her for 10 minutes.
His GPS shows that he never stopped. It shows that he went about 2.3 miles per hour. It shows that he drove through the area, he was here about 2 minutes, and that he left. He certainly didn't stop. He certainly didn't spend 10 minutes, so he certainly didn't commit the sexual assault that she claimed.
It would have been impossible.
Would have been
to
impossible.
do what he did.
But he was found guilty of that allegation.
The jury found him guilty of this, but not guilty of raping another accuser in the same park, when in her case, the GPS shows Daniel did stop here.
It simply doesn't make sense who was found guilty of what and who was found innocent, that simply the jury did what's called a jury compromise, and they decided at that point that they were just going to split the charges.
A dangerous scenario for someone accused of a pileup of 36 crimes. So Bates continues to push for Daniel's innocence. He's not getting paid, and it isn't particularly good for his reputation to so boldly defend the cop branded a, quote, serial rapist, let alone launch a website on his innocence.
And I think this is bigger than Daniel. I hope Daniel gets out one day. I hope I'm there to hold his hand and we can proclaim victory. But even if that doesn't happen, this needs to be an awakening for the rest of the public that we are going down a very dangerous road.
It's a hellish road where people convict based on emotion rather than facts. Every dedicated police officer and his or her family should be on guard. One day you're on patrol doing your job. The next, thrown under the bus in a mad rush to judgment, then thrown to the lions. The Fraternal Order of Police, for which he paid dues, wouldn't help pay for his criminal defense or fight his early termination. It was Daniel's own police chief, William City, who ultimately fired him 10 months before his trial for, quote, the greatest abuse of police authority I have witnessed in my 37 years. So much for innocent until proven guilty. Clearly, in my view, the chief did not want the next Ferguson happening in his backyard, and the black community was rallying behind the supposed victims with a group called OKC Artists for Justice, led by Grace Franklin.
We decided that when this case happened, that we were going to be voices for those women because we didn't feel like there was enough exposure, there was not enough outcry from the community, there was not enough uproar.
And uproar it was. Wailing victims, screaming crowds, intimidating jurors, and bullying on the internet. Not just for Daniel, but for his whole family.
Digging deeper, getting answers. Next on Michelle Malkin Investigates.
The liberal media will not drive this program, and liberal issues will not drive this program. We will drive this program. What we are here is pro-American, unabashed patriots. We feel positive about our country. We feel positive about our principles. And each and every night, I'm going to come to you. I hope you'll join us in what is our new national town hall meeting here on television so we can discuss these issues, figure out how to get our country back, and move it forward.
We all know the term trolls, people who hide anonymously behind a user login and write terrible things to people online. I want to read you some of the messages Daniel's older sister has gotten. I feel bad for you having to live and face the black culture, knowing that your brother is a pathetic excuse for a human. Well, he will learn dying in prison that black lives matter. Now you should ask if your brother's life matters now. I hope the other prisoners blank him, belt the blank out of him, piss on all his meals, stick his head in the toilet full of turds. Your mother is a stupid, ugly, blank whore who should kill herself out of shame, as should the rest of your family. I hope your brother suffers unimaginable pain until he is an old, old man. As in multiple big black men named Bubba blanking him until he cries like he did in court. I'm sickened to say these are real people writing real comments about Daniel, judging him by the headlines instead of the facts. And the frightening thing is, they won.
In sleepy Oklahoma City, a storm was brewing, and it wasn't a tornado. We're talking racial tension bubbling to the surface and about to spill over.
If he wasn't found guilty, I cannot guarantee that something would not have exploded emotionally.
Grace Franklin organized hundreds of people to support the accusers during the trial.
We had us saying that, okay, if it goes bad and we actually riot and the riot happens, okay, we're not gonna do it on our side of town and they're not gonna let us go to the other side of town, so what are we gonna do?
So they gathered and chanted, so loud that you could hear them inside.
We want life! The trial has started. We were so loud, the judge had to say something to the jury about us being out there.
We were hoping that the jury would have discounted what was going on in the courtroom, what was going on with the pressures of the media and the Black Lives Matter pressures and the demonstrations that were going on outside and the circus atmosphere that was going on in the courtroom.
And when he was eventually found guilty, the heckling got far worse.
Well, if I was disappointed in the judicial system, I was disgusted in the public that showed up there that night. They were literally screaming for joy as he was read guilty. And then on top of that, as Daniel's leaving, they're literally singing happy birthday to him in the hallway.
Happy birthday to you, Daniel.
I've always feared mob mentality. Mob mentality had kicked in that night. This was something that, whether or not you thought Daniel was guilty or not, this was a solemn moment.
With all the conflicting pieces of evidence, misidentifications, and false claims exposed, how did the jury find Daniel guilty on so many of the charges? 3 letters, DNA. No, not the DNA of 13 accusers, just one found on the fly of Daniel's pants, which was the only area tested, mind you. The detectives and prosecutors saw this minuscule presence of skin cells, a billionth of a gram, as their smoking gun. It belonged to a 17-year-old female.
He said, bend over. Okay. So I don't want to do this. And he was like, well.
You said that? You told him you didn't want to do it?
He said, well, this is what you're going to have to do. I don't want to have to take you to jail. I don't want to have to make it harder for you than it has to be.
Months after Daniel's face had been plastered on the news, police found the teen. She told Detective Davis that he stopped her, brought her home, and vaginally raped her. But the story, like so many of the others, raised bright red flags. Brian Bates points out that the 17-year-old's mom filed a missing persons report, then an assault and battery report against her daughter. Then there was this strange remark.
What did your daughter tell you? She said, I met this really hot cop. He told me I had a couple warrants, but he said, don't worry about it. Give me his number and we're gonna go out on dates.
Who describes their rapist as the hot cop and we're gonna go out on dates and I'm just really excited about it? It doesn't happen.
And then another twist. A third female claimed she had been sexually assaulted on the same day as the 17-year-old and Janie Liggins. Yet only the DNA of the teen, the first in the timeline, was found on Daniel's uniform. So how did it get there? His defenders have a theory that detectives spurned.
I'm not gonna try to, sugarcoat that or lessen that. That doesn't look very good. Then supposedly, after the 17-year-old, there are 2 adult females who are also sexually assaulted. Their DNA doesn't appear anywhere on the fly of the pants. And I say the fly of the pants because something that's important, they only searched the fly of the pants. They looked nowhere else. And people would say, why would they need to look anywhere else? Because one of the things you want to eliminate is you want to eliminate what's called touch DNA or transfer DNA.
Negative charge. That's what phosphate groups are all
Dr. Dan
about.
Crane, professor of biological sciences at Wright State University, is a leading expert on DNA. He is president of Forensic Bioinformatics, which reviews test results from criminal trials all over the world. He and his company have been involved in high-profile cases, like the Casey Anthony trial in Florida, the sniper case in Washington, D.C., and the Unabomber Ted Kaczynski.
The presence of a DNA profile doesn't tell us anything about the time frame or the circumstances under which that DNA came to be on the evidence sample.
And it's easier than you might think for one of these tiny particles to transfer.
I have 2 different kinds of sweetener here. I got sugar and an artificial sweetener. And I think what we can do is just show how the transfer could take place. Let me hand you the actual sugar, and I've got here a sweetener. If we just rip them open, right, I'm going to put some of my sweetener on my hand. Full gram with a sweetener. So I got a pretty sweet hand right now, right?
Mine's all naturally sweet.
Yeah, so the thing is that it's not going to be at all surprising if at this point we shake hands, right? And we come away, and I got a lot of sugar on my hand, right?
Same here.
And you got a lot of sugar on your hand, right? If we were now to take our hands and pick something up, like a water bottle, for instance, would you be surprised if when I put the water bottle down, we look and we find some sugar grains on that, right? I think that's entirely reasonable.
That's frightening. My DNA, the sugar, is on that water bottle, even though I didn't touch it. It transferred when we shook hands. And it gets even scarier. What if we never even touched?
If I grabbed a purse the way that Daniel did when he was rifling through his 17-year-old accusers, and I pick up an object, and if I handed it back to you,
sure,
what would be on it?
Interestingly, all that I see is sugar. I don't see any of the artificial sweetener, but I don't think it's at all remarkable that we would find some of that sugar on this article. And if I were to handle the article now, what we may find is the sugar's gone and it's on my hand. None of the artificial sweetener is on my hand that I can see, but I've got some sugar on my hand, and if I were to rub my shirt, the sugar's gone. It's on my shirt. If we did a DNA test, we might find only your DNA and none of mine from that transfer that we've just done.
And if you had gone to the bathroom, is it possible that some of that sugar could have transferred to the fly of your pants?
Well, of course, right? There's nothing magical about the fly of somebody's pants compared to any other part of their clothing.
There's another piece of the DNA puzzle that Daniel's appellate team believes is crucial. Right here in the crime lab analysis. It appears as if there are at least 3 contributors to the sample that ID'd the teen, including an unknown male's DNA.
Both that unknown male's DNA as well as the 17-year-old's was a result of transfer DNA. Does that sound reasonable?
Oh, absolutely. You know, the sky is literally the limit in terms of coming up with hypotheses about how those other people's DNA could have come to be associated with that evidence sample.
But when we asked police about it, they didn't buy it.
Is it possible that there's an innocuous and completely non-nefarious reason that the 17-year-old's DNA was on his pants?
On the inside of his pants? No.
He couldn't have gone to the bathroom, put his hands down there?
No.
Were the pockets of the pants tested?
No.
Why not?
Why?
Is it possible that the transfer of DNA cells from the 17-year-old to Daniel Holtzclaw came from random transfer or touch transfer?
I have not worked one sexual assault case and had transfer DNA.
Is it possible?
Anything's possible. I would never say it's not possible.
Do you think it should be standard protocol to test other areas to rule out that possibility?
Well, if we would have tested the knee of his pants, I can't say that came from a sexual assault. It's not. Does that make sense? I mean, you kind of have to use a little common sense here.
But Dr. Crane suggests common sense would mean actually testing another spot as a control.
If you think about that in the context of this case, saying that the 17-year-old's DNA was found on Officer Holtzclaw's pants, and not just his pants, but on the fly of his pants, at a first pass, this doesn't sound very good, right?
Right.
But maybe your opinion would be different if you were also told that in addition to finding that individual's DNA on the fly of his pants, it was also found on the knee or on the cuff or in the pocket or some other part of the pants that's a little bit less titillating, perhaps.
But remember, police didn't do that, nor did they fluoresce the pants or collect and test his other uniforms, including his underwear left in his laundry. And this is exactly why Daniel's defense team felt they had a strong case.
I've never seen, quote unquote, Barney Fife policing like I saw when this case was handed over to Detective Gregory. This was a man who took his list and went out and told people, I think you're a victim. Give me the details of it. This is a man who didn't find it was necessary to take a suspected serial rapist's underwear to be tested. They didn't look for semen, they didn't look for vaginal secretions, they didn't look for saliva, they didn't look for blood. They didn't care how that DNA got there. DNA's there, that's all we need. DNA is a very scary thing. People need to understand it's not like television. DNA has progressed immensely over the last decade. You can have a minute amount of DNA and can try to construct an entire story from it that's false.
Dr. Crane also expressed surprise at the investigative admissions.
I can't imagine that they would not have wanted to know why they didn't choose to test it. Is a different question, and it's a curious question. I don't know that I can't give you a good answer to it. You might recall an allegation of sexual impropriety on the part of President Bill Clinton with Monica Lewinsky. What that all hung upon was a semen stain that was found on one of Monica Lewinsky's dresses, even after that dress had been dry cleaned.
Obviously, it's not semen in this case, but what kind of skin cell DNA is it? In the prosecutor's closing statement to the jury, he boldly claimed, quote, DNA from the walls of her vagina were transferred in vaginal fluids onto the outside and the inside, not of his pockets, not of his cuff, not where he sits, but of the exact location she says his penis came in contact.
Is there a test for determining whether vaginal fluid was involved?
There's no widely used test in courts around the country for vaginal fluid.
So could one conclude from the DNA sample that was associated with the 17-year-old that it definitively came from vaginal fluid?
Absolutely not. Certainly not in my experience. I've never seen a test that's been presented in court where that assertion has been made.
So the jury was left with a misleading impression and convicted Daniel of raping the 17-year-old who called him a, quote, hot cop. 50 years in prison for those charges alone. Jurors found Daniel guilty of exactly half of the 36 charges piled up against him.
They didn't take all 13 and just clump them together. They studied each case individually. And some of them they did. They split the baby on them.
They split the baby. Is that justice?
Well, that's how they perceived it.
Splitting the difference when you're talking about the fate of a man's life, police officer or no, doesn't really seem to be how the justice system is supposed to work.
The defendant is guilty of the crime of rape in the first degree.
On his 29th birthday, Daniel's tears rolled down his cheeks as he watched in disbelief. His freedom snatched away in an instant, and his pain became a viral social media moment for ignorant haters, leaving his parents crushed.
We felt every emotion you could possibly feel, from anger to hatred to everything. I devoted my life to community service in the military and as a police officer. And dealing with seeing your own son being accused of these things was really rough. And they were the farthest from the truth.
And his big sister, who has been his greatest advocate, was shell-shocked.
I remember that phone call like it was just yesterday because I could just hear his voice, you know, just him being so shocked. We were all just so shocked, you know. So that was really hard. You know, I said, you know, I want you to be at my wedding, you know. I want you to. It was just hard, you know, just speaking with him. It was.
Did you hear fear in his voice? Did he seem afraid?
He seemed shocked, more shocked, shocked and then afraid. We were kind of speechless, you know, we both crying. Brother, we were just crying and we were trying to stay positive, you know, as we were so shocked.
In shock and despair, the system Daniel had dedicated his life to turned justice on its head, presuming guilt instead of innocence. But neither Daniel nor his family are resigned to fate.
It sounds like you're not giving up.
No, And I will not until Daniel walks out that door. I will not give up. And I told him that night of the verdict, I said, Daniel, you gotta promise me something, because I was so worried about him when he was in there. I said, Daniel, you gotta promise me something. And he said, okay. And I said, are you listening? And he couldn't speak. I said, Daniel, are you listening to me? And he said, yes. And I said, promise me this. I said, if I will keep on fighting for you if you keep fighting for yourself. So you keep fighting for yourself, and I promise I'll get you out of there.
And Daniel understands full well the social climate and political context that set the stage for his convictions.
Do you feel that you were a victim of rising anti-police bias in America?
I 100% absolutely believe that. I believe law enforcement nowadays are targeted.
Do you have any racial animosity towards other groups?
I absolutely don't. And I see what's going on in the world. I see all this, and the Black Lives Matter. I agree, but all lives matter. I want the world to see is that, you know, this can happen to you. It doesn't have to happen to another police officer. It can happen to any male. It can happen to a female. It doesn't matter what occupation you have. This can happen to you.
The way that you were portrayed not only in the courtroom of law, but also in the courtroom of public opinion, was as some sort of monster, some sort of racist, and some sort of predator.
If anyone knew who I truly was, they know about my character, they know who I am. I've worked so hard for my reputation, for my integrity. Everything I've done in my whole life I've worked for. And it'll simply just thrown away in a day.
For the Holtzclaw family, the financial incentives here are too powerful to ignore.
His life is being cut short because of what happened here, because of these accusers that lied for what? For blood money. For money that they're going to get. That's all they want, is for the money.
12 of the 13 accusers have joined a lawsuit filed by civil rights attorney Benjamin Crump. That name may sound familiar because he's famous for representing high-profile and racially charged cases. He stood with the family of Michael Brown, the shooting that sparked the Ferguson race riots, and Trayvon Martin, shot by a neighborhood watch volunteer in Florida, and cried racism, even though shooters in both cases were cleared of wrongdoing. Believe it or not, he also sits on the board of the Innocence Project in Florida, which is supposed to fight against unjust convictions and wrongful incarcerations. Crump crowed that Daniel's 263-year sentence was a triumph against racism and sexism in this widely reported comment. Quote, "This is a statement for 400 years of racism, oppression, and sexual assault of black women." While Daniel waits for his appeal to move forward, his family and supporters refuse to abandon him. His father, Eric Holtzclaw, continues to serve as a police officer in Enid, Oklahoma, working extra shifts. They spent their life savings on Daniel's defense and can no longer afford a private attorney, so they are working with a public defender. Sister Jenny has poured every ounce of energy into making her brother's story public on her website, justicefordanielholtzclaw.com. She is gathering petition signatures to ask Oklahoma Governor Mary Fallin to grant Daniel clemency. Brian Bates continues to update his website at holtzclawtrial.com. And volunteers pass out informational flyers, use social media, and contribute research to bolster his case for appeal. And Team Daniel remains strong to support those living the nightmare on the outside.
This is a typical Saturday in Oklahoma. We're fortunate to have a lot of friends and supporters here. The only one we're missing here is Daniel.
This family needs all the support they can possibly get.
Oh my God, I love it. I almost started crying.
Our heart goes out to them. We just wanted them to know that there are people here who would realize that they're good people.
All of us being here just shows the family and Daniel that they're not alone, and there's all of us.
Can you guys hear me?
Say hi, everybody, to Daniel.
Our neighbors came out, and a lot of supporters that I haven't met and we haven't met, so it was really good seeing everyone come out here and support you.
It warms my heart, it warms my family's heart just to know the support out there. see all the supporters from, you know, just from the start to how much it's grown to now, and so it melts our hearts, and it definitely gives me all that inspiration and motivation to keep fighting. Thank you very much.
I'm hoping very much that wisdom and justice will prevail, and Daniel will soon be celebrating with all of us here.
We're going to get him home. That's where he belongs, and we're going to get him home.
We, together as a team, are going to beat this, along with Daniel.
My team and I will continue to cover Daniel's case for CRTV. And remember, Veritas vos liberabit. The truth shall set you free. Hey, got a minute? Good thing, because it's time for our Social Media Minute. Today's email comes from Helen Barrington, who I'm sorry to say is not a fan. Quote, "Dear Miss Malkin, have you always been this hateful and vindictive, or did it just begin with President Obama's election? You spew such vile hatred that when I see you in our editorial section of the newspaper, I get ill. Where did you learn to be so nasty? How can you look at yourself in the mirror and not think about what you have written? I feel sorry for your family. Thank you." Well, thank you, Miss Barrington, for illustrating a tried and true tactic of the left, defining any political disagreement or dissent as hatred. Since I began my career in 1992, back when Barack Obama was just a community organizer in Chicago, I've done my best to back up my arguments and opinions with facts. I am guided not by hate, but by my faith in the rule of law, limited government, and the good Lord above, and always with a smile on my face. I look forward to hearing from you on Twitter, Facebook, or of course at Michelle@MichelleMalkinInvestigates.com. In our Crap Weasel Watch, we call out the political cheaters, government thieves, con artists, frauds, and all-around idiots making America worse. This time we're zeroing in on another American college campus gone wild. At California State University, Los Angeles, conservative students have become targets for radical liberals waging a vicious campaign to suppress political free speech. The university's chapter of the Young America's Foundation brings conservative speakers to campus to provide alternative perspectives. That's true diversity, but it's too much for the supposedly tolerant leftists on campus to handle. YAF members caught students tearing down posters for an event featuring Black pro-life conservative Star Parker. The vandals sneered at the conservative students as, quote, retarded, and singled out Black conservatives as, quote, coons. That tells you all you need to know about progressives' commitment to peace, love, and racial tolerance. Good news, the YAF members aren't backing down, which gives me hope in the millennial generation. We need all the foot soldiers we can get battling crap weasels. It's a full-time job. This week, our Bulldog Award goes to an outstanding citizen, Brian Bates, whom we featured in our Daniel in the Den series. His thorough, honest, and vigilant work on the case at HoltzclawTrial.com is a model for any citizen in the pursuit of truth. But Brian does much more. Among the many hats he wears, he's a social media pioneer. In the mid-1990s, he became a citizen watchdog when he got fed up with rampant prostitution and human trafficking in his Oklahoma City neighborhood. He picked up a video camera and started uploading videos to his YouTube channel, John TV. The channel quickly went viral. It didn't make him popular with the criminals, and sometimes law enforcement officials and local prosecutors weren't too happy either. In fact, when Bates met Daniel Holtzclaw for the first time, Daniel informed him that his police academy teachers had warned trainees to be wary of Bates. They are the unlikeliest of allies on the journey to justice. Daniel is fortunate, but so is Oklahoma City and the rest of America, whose success and well-being depends on an engaged, informed, and active citizenry.
Next on Michelle Malkin Investigates.
From violent riots.
Black Lives Matter. Seem to believe that white police officers just get up in the morning thinking, what black person am I going to shoot today?
To shocking and indiscriminate murders.
They find that hate target is us. The cop is the most visible symbol of government authority, and they're anti-government, anti-authority.
If you listen to the rhetoric and the speeches, ordinary people can get very emotional, get angry, and they assassinate police officers. I'm afraid that that will increase.
So white lives matter now, because now the bullet is going into a white body instead of a typical 18-year-old Crip or Blood or somebody on the corner.
Our nation is under siege. Our cops are in the crosshairs.
The system of Sylville Smith screaming to anybody who would hear, burn the suburbs down.
Next on MMI.
If you've got a story to share, email me at michelle@michellemalkininvestigates.com. On this show, we dig deeper, shatter false narratives, and get answers in the pursuit of justice. On behalf of our entire team, I'm Michelle Malkin. Thanks so much for joining us.